Hi everyone, welcome to Python tutorials for image processing. In the last couple of tutorials, we actually looked at setting up our Google Colab for deep learning because we are going to talk about deep learning in the next upcoming tutorials. So it's very important for you to make sure you're comfortable with the working environment. And I definitely recommend Google Colab. Now, if you really do not want to upload your images and work in the cloud, but you have like a decent system that you have for exploring deep learning, then let me show you how to properly set it up if you haven't done that already, for deep learning. Now, this video is not about getting your system ready for TensorFlow GPU, for example. If you have GPU, NVIDIA GPU, and you're wondering, hey, how do I install the right version of TensorFlow, the right version of Keras, for example, and what are the right CUDA drivers, this is not the video for you. Okay, and there are that's a slightly more complicated topic, and please search online for other resources. This video is about those of you who have been following these tutorials until this point but have never set up your system with TensorFlow or install your system with TensorFlow. This is basically for you guys. Okay, so let's jump in and let me show you on a different system that I have never used before. For deep learning. So we collectively go through this experience. In case we run into any issues, we'll have to figure it out. Okay, so let's jump in. And let's start by creating a new Python environment. And this is where we are creating a completely new environment that doesn't hopefully affect our existing environment, because until now we have been working with scikit-learn and OpenCV, scikit-image, and we have something going on. By installing new stuff, I'm not sure how it's going to affect the old things that I rely on for other work. So let's go ahead and create a new environment. And there are many ways of creating this, especially if you have Anaconda Spyder. You can do this from command prompt, or you can just do this from Anaconda Navigator, which is probably the easiest way to do. If you have other forms of IDE, please figure out how to create your own new environment so we can go ahead and start installing TensorFlow and everything else that we need. Okay, so here, let's navigate to Environments and click on Create. And let's give this a name. Let's first of all, let's actually see where our TensorFlow actually works, right? I mean, let's look at the documentation before picking up, because here you can actually say, okay, I would like to work with Python 3.4 or 3.5 or 3.7 or 2.7, whatever version. But then, is that the right version for for TensorFlow? So let's jump in and let's go ahead and open the documentation. Again, I recommend working with Keras because this makes machine learning easy. So let's see how we can get started with Keras. So you can go to keras.io, go ahead and look at the documentation. I'm going to click on Get Started. And again, there's a lot of resources, as you can see here. You can click on, for example, Introduction to Keras for Researchers or Engineers, and there's a lot of learning material here. Again, I used to spend a lot of time just going through the documentation here because you never know what you will find useful. But for now, let's go ahead and look at about Keras. Okay. And you see the Keras is imported from TensorFlow. So from TensorFlow, import Keras. That means we got to install TensorFlow. Okay, so it talks about everything here, but let's look at installation and compatibility. And here it says Keras TensorFlow 2 is compatible with Python 3.5 to 3.8. Again, this is why I'm not talking about GPU now. If you have older NVIDIA graphics cards, probably you can go only up to TensorFlow 1 point something. And TensorFlow 2, you cannot use that because the CUDA drivers and TensorFlow is not compatible. So that's exactly why making a video on that topic can be a bit challenging, because things are changing all the time. And there are so many versions of NVIDIA graphics cards out there that work on different CUDA drivers. But for now, let's just focus on the CPU version. Okay, so we are good with Python 3.5 to 3.8, and I am on Windows 10, so Windows 7 or later, so I seem to be pretty good. And how do I install this? I believe it's just pip install. I mean, we can just go to the TensorFlow documentation, how to install it, and they say it's just pip install TensorFlow. So all we will do is create a new environment with Python, let's say 3.7. I haven't explored 3.8 much, but I know a lot of libraries are available for 3.7. Just because TensorFlow works on 3.8 Doesn't mean you have scikit-image, scikit-learn, and other libraries that can work on that. So you have to do a bit of a homework on this one. Okay, am I okay with Python 3.8 with respect to other libraries that you're working with? So let's go back to our right here, and then let's actually select, for example, 3.7. In fact, 3.8 is not even available as part of this list based on the Spyder Anaconda version I have right now. Okay, so let's just do Python 3.7 with TF CPU. Okay, that tells me, okay, this is Python 3.7 environment with TensorFlow for CPU. If you want, if you know exactly the version of TensorFlow you're going to install, you can also do that. But TensorFlow is something I upgrade and downgrade all the time. So I'm going to leave this and I'll hit the create thing, and it takes about a few minutes for this to kind of install all the basic libraries and everything. So I'll pause the video and I'll continue after this process is done. Okay, and it's basically, as you can see, it's installing my new environment. Like I said, it takes a few minutes. So let me go ahead and stop this or pause this and then continue after this environment is ready. Okay, my new environment seems to be ready. It didn't take that long, as you can see. That's probably because it did not install a lot of stuff. And we have to install almost everything from scratch, including your scikit-learns and everything else that we have done before. Or what we could have done was take your existing environment, whatever you were working with, and instead of creating a new one, you clone it and then add TensorFlow on top of it. Okay, so now let's go back to our home, and the new environment is already selected here. And go ahead and install whatever IDE that you plan on using. Right now, again, Visual Studio Code, we can go ahead and launch it, but then I would really like to work with Spyder that I have been working with. So let's go ahead and install this in this environment. You have to install Spyder for each environment that you have actually created. Again, this may take a few seconds, so let's go ahead and pause this video one more time and continue it as soon as we have Spyder ready. Okay, so our Spyder is installed in this new environment. So let's go ahead and launch it and get it ready. Okay, so here is our Spyder with a brand new environment. So let's go ahead and check a couple of things. So first of all, let me zoom in just by doing Control-Shift+. Okay, and now let's, for the fun of it, import sklearn. It probably says no module named sklearn. Let's see, import pandas. These are the stuff that we normally use, right? So this kind of tells you, okay, this is a new environment right there. So let's clear the screen and let's install TensorFlow. So we just copied this from earlier, pip install TensorFlow. Okay, let's go ahead and do this. Okay, so again, this took a little while, so I had to pause the video, but finally it seems to be done after a couple of minutes, I should say. And again, I'm doing this on a low-end laptop with a Wi-Fi connection, so it gives you an idea of what to expect from your side. So let's expand this a little bit and have a quick look of what it actually did. Okay, let's go back and find our command there. So it's downloading our TensorFlow 2.4, and it seems to have installed quite a few dependencies right there, h5, right? So in case you want to save your models as h5 files, you kind of need that. NumPy, of course, you need that. TensorBoard, if you want to look at the progress of your, or even after your training is done, if you want to understand the training curves and loss curves, this can be a great way of looking at them. What else did it do? Keras pre-processing. Again, if you would like to, again, there are a few modules under Keras pre-processing that can be useful. Hopefully we'll explore those when the right time comes. I'm not very much familiar with Google Auth. I haven't used that, but it apparently sounds like some sort of an authorization type of library where you can authorize your Google credentials and possibly work with your Google Colab. Again, hopefully I'll get to explore that and see where we get there with that library. Everything seems to be okay. It doesn't explicitly say that it installed Keras, which means when you say import Keras, that may not work out. But if you say import from TensorFlow, import Keras, that probably works out. So first thing first, let's anytime I install something, I always restart the kernel. So I'll go to restart the kernel so we can import TensorFlow and see if things are working fine. Now, what do we do once we import it? Well, let's go back to our documentation that we saw earlier, and let's go back to Keras. So this was a bit explicit in terms of how we can use it. So let's just use these lines just to see if everything is working fine. Or we can just type from TensorFlow import Keras and we should be pretty much good. Okay, so let's go back, and the kernel is still reinstalling, but you can see my restarting, I should say. Again, I'm recording the video and this system is very slow on the same system, and also trying to do a few things here. Sorry about that, but we'll switch back to the other system once we go through this exercise starting next video. Okay, so my Python 3.79, and let's as soon as this is done, let's go ahead and import TensorFlow. Okay, so it took a while, but let's now, moment of truth, right? Actually, let's import TensorFlow first as TF. Okay, this is the typical convention. Let's import TensorFlow as TF, and then if this works out okay, then let's go ahead and load Keras from TensorFlow. So it's throwing some errors. I'm not sure what's going on here. Coup.dll, that tells me it's probably looking for GPU there, but ignore above coup.error if you do not have a GPU. So it's telling me go ahead and ignore that message, even though it threw an error. Fine. Okay, now let's check our Keras, the moment of truth. So from sorry, I have to click at the right place. From TensorFlow, let's import Keras. There you go. So this tells us we are all set. We do not need to install Keras separately. So from now on, anything that we end up using, in terms of Keras, like for example, keras.layers. Okay. So in older versions, you can actually only like install Keras and then import Keras, and from keras.layers import dens, for example. But now we can just do tensorflow.keras.layers, go ahead and import dens. So anything that we do that I'm going to show you in future, whether it is on Colab or on Spyder, now you know how to actually import your Keras and how to hopefully put together your layers and so on, as you will see in upcoming tutorials. So one final thing before moving on, let's see how, again, within keras.layers import dens. There you go. It's a bit slow because, again, like I said, I'm working on a system that's very slow, just to simulate the situation that some of you may have. We all work with older laptops. That's exactly why I fired up this old laptop, to make sure everything works even on the older systems. Okay, now I'll not continue recording this video because I think you got the point, but I'm going to install OpenCV, scikit-image, scikit-learn, Pillow to handle images, NumPy, Pandas, okay, to begin with. And then also Seaborn and Matplotlib if it's not already there, and any other libraries that you think will be using in future. Okay, so I hope again you found this tutorial to be very useful, and please go ahead and subscribe to this channel because we are going to do some deep learning in the next few tutorials. So I hope you have your systems ready, whether it is Google Colab or your local system. Be ready for the upcoming tutorials. Thank you.